All right, folks, we are at the hour, so let's get this thing started, shall we? First thing is first, need to ask the very cliche thing. Can everyone see and hear me okay? Give me a thumbs up if you can. Just want to be able to make sure. Okay, seeing the thumbs up. Wonderful. Well, everybody, first and foremost, thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to come to this presentation. If you don't know who I am, my name is Dr. Luke Hobson. I'm a senior instructional designer and program manager over at MIT. I also make a lot of content on the internet all about instructional design, blog, a podcast, and a YouTube channel, because my passion is instructional design. I absolutely love what it is that I do for a living, and being able to share more about these experiences with folks like you has been something that has been so cool and has filled me with so much joy to be able to do this over the last couple of years. And then I love instructional design so much, I actually wrote a book about it called What I Wish I Knew Before Becoming an Instructional Designer. And this book was basically like, if you and I were in a coffee shop and you said to me, hey, Luke, I'm thinking about becoming an instructional designer. What do I need to know? Is there anything I need to look out for? What's something that you wish that you knew about before going over into this field? And that is exactly what you're going to be hearing about today. This is going to be essentially a crash course presentation all about the summary of the book, if you will, just to instill into you as much information as I possibly can. So for those of you transitioning over into this field, or perhaps you already are an instructional designer looking to learn from a different type of perspective, all are welcome into this presentation. So folks, what we are going to do is that because I have a lot of content that I want to be able to share with you today, what I'd ask is that if you do have questions, we're going to save that for the end. And because already there's 100 something of you already on this call, what I'd ask is that you hold on to your question, and then at the end, we'll have time for our chat. And then if you want to just plug and play your question inside of a chat, I'll do like a rapid fire round where I'm going to try to answer as many questions as I can with as much time that we do have. So that is all I ask. But before we get started, I have a question for all of you. Go into the chat for me once again, real quick. Did you know about instructional design before the pandemic, before 2020? Give me a yes or give me a no. I'm actually seeing quite a good mixture of yeses and nos, and that is so interesting. So whenever I talk to somebody about instructional design, oftentimes what I'm going to hear is that somebody will say that they just heard about this field. It seems so new and exciting, and they can't wait to learn more about instructional design. And yes, of course, it is exciting. It is awesome. I can't wait for you to learn more about instructional design. But let me be clear, it is not new. Actually, we can trace our origins back to World War II. We can thank the University of Florida and the United States Army for trying to be able to figure out what is a better way for us to be able to train our troops in a cohesive manner. And then from this, all of the learning theorists you come to know and love, with Benjamin Bloom probably one of the most significant ones you probably heard of before, but eventually moving on to Skinner, Gagne, Merrill, and many of the other famous names that we know of today started to emerge. Fast forward into the 80s, the first ever type of training computer-based program was developed called Plato. And this is when we first started to be able to have training go more into this digital type of online world. Fast forward a couple of years from there, and all of a sudden it was impossible not to hear a commercial online talking about going back to school, whether it's the University of Phoenix, ITT Tech. All of a sudden, when you were talking to someone and they said, oh, I'm going back for my master's and my bachelor's and I'm doing it online, it became a normal part of conversation. Only now in the year of 2022 to have some schools have hundreds of thousands of students enrolled into their online programs. And now this leaves us into this very interesting time that essentially I am just dubbing as the ID boom, because every single organization I can think of is hiring for an instructional designer. And it is extremely interesting to see how rapidly our field has evolved with just the last couple of years. So, of course, if I'm going to be talking about the field of instructional design, the very first thing that I want to be able to share with you all is talking about the pros and the cons of instructional design. This is the thing that I wish that someone had told me early on, because, of course, I was captivated by the fact of like, what is this field? What is this job? I can actually get paid for designing the learning experience for folks. Like, that's a real thing. And of course, come to find out, it was. But of course, it is a job. So I want to be able to give you a realistic perspective about what I have encountered over the field and in my career. Not trying to dissuade anybody from becoming an ID, but just want to make sure that you know a little bit more about everything as well. First and foremost, the biggest pro, in my opinion, is that instructional design, I would actually call it a form of art. And that's because of the fact that your creative opportunities are endless. It is so interesting. If you were thinking about, if you are somebody who is a creative thinker, if you like problem solving, if you like putting together puzzles, and you love really being able to actually get paid for doing this for a living, instructional design is for you. What I have found so fascinating is that while, of course, we do have guidelines for best practices and how to do things as far as for with developing effective trainings and rubrics and syllabi and all these other different things, whether you're coming from this with a higher ed perspective, corporate, or for many other different types of sectors, there's also really not some form of golden rule to say that you should really be using scenario-based learning at this point in time, or project-based learning here, or over in this part of the overall course or training, a simulation would really be effective. It is very much up to you as a designer and working together with your subject matter expert to be able to determine how exactly everything is going to go. Now, what's so cool about this and why I call it a form of art is that because of you, your own type of personality, your experiences, they are going to be embedded into the product. So the course, the training, the program, the workshop, the webinar, the residency, the summit, the whatever you are designing is going to have elements of you, and that's what makes something so special. And what other job is there that exists where you're going to be mapping out the entire learning experience from start and then all the way until the finish? If you are able to actually think about it like a map and trying to be able to pinpoint what our students and our learners are going to be experiencing within every single page, every section, every click, it is so fascinating to be able to think about how we are going to help people as far as for achieving the goals that we set. What problems are we trying to solve with education? And of course, how are we going to guide them there by mapping out this type of learning journey? And what exactly are you going to do to make that happen? Will you be using presentations or capstones or peer-reviewed activities or case studies or simulations? And the list goes on and on and on with different forms of assessments, activities, and other different types of learning techniques that you can use to really wow the students, to wow the learners, and to be able to have an overall incredible learning experience. The next part to me is that Smees are some incredibly powerful allies that you want on your team. Now, when I say Smees, what I'm referring to are subject matter experts. These are the people who we partner with together in order to develop our products. And for Smees in particular, while I know that there is a kind of like negative misconception out there for some people, they're like, oh, Smees are the worst. And don't get me wrong, we all have a horror story or two of working with somebody who wasn't great to work with, but that is also just human beings. I can confidently say from being able to develop everything over my career, I've only really had 2 Smees that were just absolutely not pleasant to work with. Other than that, most of the time, they are wonderful and incredible people to work with. And if you think about it, in what other world do you have the opportunity to learn from someone who is an expert in their craft, who is dedicated and developed time, energy, and resources and everything of a sort into what it is that they do? And you get to learn from this person. You get to work with them. And of course, you get to add them over into your network. This is going to be a person who potentially you could reach out to as far as for with assistance or questions or guidance. And if you do something as far as for making an incredible working relationship with this person, well, they're going to stick around and they're actually going to become your champions. It is so funny to hear when working with some of the Smees from over the years that they're going to go and tell other people that we work with, as far as for saying that, like, oh, yeah, I know, Luke, we developed something awesome together. You should really look into this because I know that him and his team can help you out too. And if you were able to do this and make champions with these people, more opportunities are absolutely going to come your way from an organizational standpoint, from more projects, and of course, from you as an individual as well. And last but not least, you are always learning. Always, always, always learning. If you are somebody who watches the History Channel for fun, if you first heard about Bitcoin and you started going down a rabbit hole for 30 minutes of what the heck is this and how am I able to invest in this and what is it that I do, if you just love to learn, instructional design is absolutely for you. Some of the key things that you're going to be learning about: project management, networking, managing a budget, leadership training, onboarding, multimedia skills. The list goes on and on and on. You are able to absolutely diversify how much you are going to learn, and of course, how it is going to help you not only within an instructional design role, but I would argue too that these skills could apply to whatever it is that you want to do from here on out with the rest of your career. These are absolutely going to become essential. So now let's talk about the cons. Once again, I am not trying to dissuade anybody. This is just a form of my experience, my overall perspectives about the negative side of the house when it comes to instructional design. You may absolutely see one of my cons, by the way, and say like, no, actually, I like that, which is entirely possible, FYI. But these are my cons. The first is the schedule and stability. I remember reading a blog post a long time ago, and like the very first pro that the person listed out as far as to why you should become an instructional designer is that you will always have a normal 9-to-5 job. And I read that and I was like, well, I'm doing something wrong because I have never, ever, ever had a normal 9-to-5 job. If the person tells me that they work best in the evenings, I'm working in the evenings. If they tell me that they're working early in the morning, well, then, hey, guess what? I'm going to do my best to match them early on in the morning. And trying to be able to think about this too, as far as for if you are working on several projects over the year, there's many projects that I literally have right now where some are just kicking off, some are kind of in the middle, and some are closer towards the end. So because of that, my projects really do feel like they are constantly up and down in ebbs and flows. And for someone who likes to keep things as cool, collected, and nonstop, a traditional 9-to-5, I have yet really to experience that. The other thing that I found to be kind of odd, I've read about how some folks are like, oh, summer must be your downtime because you work in education. Like, nope, it's the exact opposite. Summer is actually my busiest by far because my subject matter experts, my professors, my faculty members, they have downtime during the summer. So, of course, they want to be able to work on their projects over the summer. So instead, I am kind of slammed when it comes to this time frame. The next is change. Instructional designers are change agents. We are fantastic when it comes to change. It doesn't mean, though, that we like it. It's more about something that we have to do. When I think about my communication style, I am constantly communicating with many different types of stakeholders, and the way that I'm communicating with them is absolutely going to be different. For instance, if I'm talking to a subject matter expert, that's going to be different compared to myself talking to, let's say, marketing for someone trying to promote the product, or the advising team with being able to coach people through it as far as with more of a maintenance and a success rate type of an operation. So it's just a lot of different forms of communication and talking with many different stakeholders all at once. And then, of course, by doing that, you constantly have a different type of mindset each day. For the project that just kicked off, I have to go into this type of researcher mode. I'm doing everything as far as with analysis and talking with the marketing team and figuring out who is a target audience, what this should overall look like. For something that's more towards the end of the entire product development lifecycle, well, then this is more of me going through things as like a QA tester and a reviewer, just to make sure that everything does look perfect and that we are ready and good to go when it comes to launch time. And then last, but absolutely not least, which is so strange, is that I have found over the years that this situation kind of keeps on happening where I find myself being the middle person. I am stuck between two parties who are disagreeing with one another, and it's up to me to be the one to negotiate the peace treaty to make sure that everybody is happy. So let me give you an example. Let's say that you were developing an MBA program for a university. You've been assigned to work with numerous subject matter experts who are both trainers and professors. They've done these live courses before, and they're telling you the biggest hit about their courses is that they use a simulation. It's what everybody raves about, and they tell you that if we can use this for this brand new online MBA, you absolutely need to do this. And then, of course, you're like, all right, let me go check it out. You look up the product, you vet it, you find out, yeah, the simulation, it's awesome. We should absolutely use this. You have a ton of different ideas about what you can do with that. But you look at the price tag and you're like, oh, ooh, that's kind of expensive. Like, I don't know if we can actually make this work. Well, let me go talk with my director and my dean. And yeah, let's see, maybe there's room in the budget. So you go talk to the director and the dean and you present your case and you get an absolute hard no. And they tell you there's no way. You need to go back to your subject matter experts and see if there's any other alternative. And you say, okay, and you go back to the Smees and tell them, and immediately they are completely turned off and say, absolutely not. It's either this or nothing. And if we don't do that, that's a huge problem. So who ends up solving that problem? Well, unfortunately, it's the instructional designer, and you need to be able to figure it out. And while this is certainly a very rare case, I can only think of about maybe 4 times this has happened where it's come really, really kind of scary within my instructional design career, but it has happened. And as somebody who likes everyone else to be happy, I have found myself trying to become the negotiator, the problem solver, and hoping that we can work out everything in the end. And then the other area, it's not really a pro, it's not really a con. So I guess I'll call it like an in-between. And what this in-between is I'm calling it as in that's not in my job description. Now, what that means is that you are working as an instructional designer and you find an idea and you're like, we need to do this. This is going to make the product, the learning experience incredible. We have to do this. So you go into your team meeting and you bring up the idea and say, hey, we should do this. And they say, great, can't wait for you to get started. And you're like, wait, no, that wasn't the point. I wasn't trying to just throw the idea out to give myself more work. It was that we should work on it together. And they're like, nope, it's all you. And you're like, yay, that's what's going to happen. Okay, I guess I'm going to do this. Now, this has happened to me multiple times throughout my career where I'm going to pitch an idea and I feel like someone is more qualified for me to be able to do this. And then I look around the room at the team and I'm like, oh, nope, by default, I think it might actually be me. Now, this happened to me for a couple of variety of things, but overall with webinars and definitely for podcasts, what I do for my courses, my trainings, my programs, and everything else that I design, I always do a pilot program. I want to be able to get learner feedback at the end of every single week from a quantitative perspective by having a survey, and then following up with a qualitative phase and making sure that I'm doing focus groups and interviews and just to learn more about what they were talking about. And what I found from doing this, sometimes it's a very interesting and revealing thing. And one of them is that I kept hearing from people is that they wanted to be more involved in the course, but they didn't have time. I'm like, okay, what on earth does that mean? I'm like, do you want more activities? No. Okay, how about more exercises? No. I'm like, okay, what can I possibly do to make you feel more involved, but somehow not add more to your plate? And as we kept on talking, finally, I realized time, I need to dive into that further. And I was just like, so you want to be involved, but you don't have time. Where do you have the time during your day to be more involved? And then that's when I heard from people of, oh, the commute, the ride to work. I have an hour going to and back every day. You can give me something in that time frame, I'll do it. Okay, so what you're telling me is that if I make podcasts for courses, would you actually listen? I have no idea. They said yes. I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to figure out how to do this. So thus, I started making podcasts for our courses. And I did this for a leadership program for MIT. And it was absolutely crazy to be able to figure out, first and foremost, how to make a podcast, how to do it well. But I found by reaching out to the multimedia team, they had some extra types of pieces of content from interviews that simply we couldn't add over into the course. It would have been overkill and way too much content. So I was able to take these interview files and then myself, I acted as the narrator, telling a story and weaving things together and putting this into the appropriate week for every part of the program. I launched it out into the world and basically crossed my fingers and toes and said, wow, I really hope that this works. And I found out not only through downloads and the reviews that people were enjoying it, but I also saw too within the discussion boards that people were going into the discussion board and they were like, hey, when's the next episode of the podcast coming out? It's like, oh no, I'm done. I did not plan on making this as a part of my full-time job. I don't have more, but I really do hope that you enjoyed these. So once again, this was me simply raising my hand with an idea, hoping and praying that maybe someone is actually going to like it, and it did work out. So for a pro, yeah, this was cool. I developed a brand new skill set. Before this, I did not have much experience of making podcasts for courses, so that was really interesting. A con, nothing at all came off of my plate, and I had to essentially do this after work in order to effectively figure out how I was going to go all about this. So the next thing that I really wish that someone had told me about was actually how to explain the instructional design role, which is so interesting because I first heard about instructional design back in 2013 from networking with everybody when I worked at a primarily online university. And I was so curious to see what everyone's jobs were. I had no idea. All the titles didn't mean anything to me back then. And I stumbled upon one friend of mine who was an instructional designer. And I was like, hey, what is it that you do? It's like, oh, well, you know how we have our online courses? I was like, well, yeah. He's like, well, somebody has to design those and work with the professors in order to make that happen. And that's what I do. Like, really? I was like, that's what you get paid to do? I was like, yeah. Like, okay, well, how do I get this job? So that became this mission to become an instructional designer. So I had this idea in my head that everyone must know what instructional design is. And that was until I became an instructional designer and I introduced myself inside of every kickoff call for every project. And the exact same thing would happen. We had all these different members inside of this project kickoff call, and there would be someone from marketing, someone from sales, a subject matter expert, and somebody who was running the course of a training or whatever it was. And as they would go around the room and introduce themselves and say their title, everyone seemed to nod in agreement as far as we're saying that they know, they understand what it is that these people do for a living. And then, of course, it comes to me and I'm like, I'm Luke. I'm an instructional designer. Got a lot of blank looks of like, what's instructional design? I'm like, oh, okay. Apparently, I need to find a better way to be able to properly introduce myself. Now, while I was doing this, I was also trying to be a little bit clever and figure out what can I bring to the table. When I first started to introduce myself, I was also told to just call myself the learning expert. Now, for me, working in higher ed, saying that I'm a learning expert and working with faculty who have been teaching for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, they're like, yeah, so are we. So what is it that you do? And I was thinking about it, and I was like, you know what? My edge is the fact that I have been involved within the online space since basically 2006. So what I started to say, when you can absolutely take my script, by the way, and modify it, edit it, what you will, but I talk about how I understand how people learn online. Using this knowledge, I partner with somebody like yourself, like a subject matter expert. I take what you know and I combine it with what I know about how to create a meaningful learning experience. Now, being able to actually do this, what's then going to happen is that we are focusing on making sure that the learning experience and the ask of what people are doing is going to be crystal clear and transparent. So people know exactly why we are asking them to do something, and they can see how they're going to be able to hit these goals. And we are going to be doing this by developing curricular resources and materials that align and link to everything across the board. When I started to introduce myself that way, while some people just basically said, oh, you're the online learning expert guy, I was like, well, yeah, it's a part of it, but no, I do more. But at least they started to give me a chance, and I was able to explain myself and kind of show what it is that I can really do over time. And when you think about it, I can also understand why it might be so confusing, because within us, within this field, we know that instructional designers wear many, many hats. We are the learning experts. We are the researchers. We are the technologists. We are the project managers. But also, most importantly, we are relationship managers. Because if you do not have an established and incredible working relationship with somebody, your project is quickly going to fall apart. So that brings me to the next thing that I wish I knew was how to work with subject matter experts. And I would argue, if I was to tell you anything, this very well could have been the number one thing I said in this entire webinar. Could have been literally just, how do you work with other people? How do you influence? How do you persuade? How to negotiate? What do you do when someone else is the key decision maker and you have to work with them? They don't report to you. You don't report to them, but you need to be able to find common ground and figure out how to work together. So what is it exactly that you're going to be able to do? Now, with this process, the biggest thing too, as well, is that this must be an equal partnership. There has to be an equal voice in the design process. If you have ever seen some courses that were clearly 90% of the SME and let's say 10% of the instructional designer, it is pretty clear when it's incredibly content heavy. On the flip side, if it's 90% the instructional designer and 10% the SME, well, then it's not going to be as effective as possible. So you want this equal type of balance, this type of a 50-50 split. So what do you do? How do you actually establish these good common grounds right from the beginning? My first tip for you is to actually use a strategy which is simply known as Google. Yes, researching people before you meet them is incredibly, incredibly effective. And it's so simple. But I found just by Googling somebody, you are looking for things such as with their education, articles, blogs, papers, LinkedIn, YouTube, courses, interviews, press releases, accomplishments, awards, anything that this person has done. You are trying to find their passions. You are trying to learn more about them. So then that way, when you go and actually meet them for the very first time, you can actually see this and you can try to make it a reality in order to really be able to create an incredible relationship. So I'll give you an example about how I have actually done this, because I definitely, for years, all I was trying to do was basically wing it. I would go to these meetings and I'm like, oh, maybe this person will just like me if I show them I'm working really hard. And yeah, that really didn't work out so well. So finally, I was absolutely sick and tired of this. And I was like, no, you know what? I am going to conduct so much research. I am going to figure this out. So let me see, how am I going to do this? And this is essentially what I did, is that I went onto Google and I was assigned to work with a SME all about business strategies. Incredibly vague. I have no idea what direction this program is going to be going into, but I found this SME on LinkedIn. From LinkedIn, I actually saw that his personal website was listed inside of the featured page. From there, I was able to dive on in and I saw that he had numerous blog postings that were all about his thoughts around strategy and his tips and his techniques. All of a sudden, I was like, oh my gosh, thank you. I now know what I'm going to do. So I read and I downloaded every single blog. And what I was trying to do was to be able to pick up on the terminology. I was trying to understand more about his perspectives and where he was coming from and what was his mindset when he was writing those different types of blogs. So then when I met him and we did the kickoff call and I actually got to introduce myself, say, hey, I'm Luke, I'm a designer and blah, 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 I could tell that he was starting to size me up. He was looking at me and same thing. It was just like, why is he on the project? Do I really need him? I was starting to get that look from him. But then the minute he started to talk about business strategies and he said one of the key terms that I remembered from his blog, I was just like, haha, now I need to jump on in. And as soon as he said that, I was just like, oh, I know exactly what that word and definition means. I read your latest blog. It's like, you read my blog? I was like, oh yeah, I read the last 3 of them. They were really insightful. No, you didn't. So like, no, I did. And I actually showed him my notes and I said, I looked at everything. You had so many really interesting ideas. I have a couple of ideas of my own, how we can take these and how we can transform them into an online way that I know that learners are really going to enjoy. After that, it was incredibly simple to be able to work together. We essentially jumped several steps ahead of time, and that's where we were able to start things off on the right foot. And they were pretty much perfect for going forwards of being able to actually make this type of an online course. Now, after that, though, let's say the research is done. The other thing, but I like to really be able to do and dive on in is that I essentially conduct interviews with subject matter experts, which is kind of funny. So let me explain a bit more about that. Is that over the years, I have worked with many instructional designers on the same projects. For some that are like really huge, we need to have maybe 2 or 3 instructional designers at the same time working on the same thing. And from being there, sometimes I was just there to be a helping hand. Essentially, I was kind of like the junior instructional designer. And I was listening to how the other instructional designers went about with everything. And wow, do we do things very, very differently. So as soon as I started to recognize that, I was like, I need to figure out if they have worked with an instructional designer before, but also what were their styles? So I began to start asking this question. Have you worked with an instructional designer before? If yes, and these are the 3 little words that you are going to be saying is tell me more. Why are you saying tell me more? Because you want to know about what their past experiences were like working with other instructional designers. And you can get so much information just by asking open-ended questions and being able to keep on stringing along the conversation. So something like this, as an example, let's say you start working with a SME and you say, oh, I heard that you worked with another instructional designer before. Is that true? Oh, yes, I actually worked with Tara. We worked in our data science program together. It was great. Awesome. Tell me more. What made that great for you? Oh, we did this really weird thing called course mapping. I've never actually seen that before, but it was really interesting. It helped me to gain a full perspective of that. Oh, fantastic. For course mapping, did you use something like Google Sheets? Yeah, that's what we use. Great. I'm going to do that for you in the future. Is there anything else that you can tell me more about? Oh, yeah, we also did this usually around Tuesdays at 2:00, and that was perfect. That worked best for my schedule. Okay, got it. Tuesdays at 2:00, doing course mapping. We're going to make sure that all these things are there for you, just so that way we're not changing anything up, and we're going to keep on rocking and rolling at the exact same pace that you had before. So by being able to ask more about this, you can understand more about their wants, their needs, and their pain points, because you don't know. You don't know what they went through. You also have no idea what else are they working on. Are they working on other projects? Is this actually something that's going to be like the cherry on top, but they already have a million things to do, and now they have one more thing. Also, by asking more about these thought-provoking questions, you're going to be able to figure out if there are any different types of myths that you can dispel and get rid of as well. For some people, once again, they have never worked with an instructional designer before, or perhaps they have never developed a course or a training or a program or whatever it is, and they have all these different types of misconceptions. So you're going to be able to clarify that and also figure out how they prefer to work together on a project, which is actually really interesting. Something I didn't start asking about until one day, the light bulb moment finally went off inside of my head. And to hopefully prove my point, go into the chat for me very quickly and tell me, when are you most creative during the day? Mornings, afternoons, or evenings? Exactly. I'm seeing mornings, I'm seeing afternoons, I'm seeing evenings. Yeah, exactly. I'm seeing that all of you have a different type of preference. And like many of you, mornings are best for me. But as you can just see, someone just put in all caps evenings because evenings works for them. I get it. I absolutely understand. And it's so funny because when we start working with subject matter experts, we reflect upon to them how we prefer to work. And I started to do this with one SME, and I quickly realized they were burning out. And I was like, wait a minute. It's like, I can see the problem because the way that we do things, we were doing things in the morning to match my schedule. And that is not at all how she preferred to work. She liked to do things in the afternoons. And then as soon as I figured out that, I was like, oh, okay, your creative juices are flowing for you in the afternoon after you had your second cup of coffee. Well, then let's do that way instead. And it's incredibly helpful to be able to do that. The next is the power of branding, networking, and LinkedIn. Now, I know this is kind of silly, but I'm also curious. Go into the chat for me. How many of you use LinkedIn? Give me a yes, give me a no. I am seeing a billion yeses. This makes me very, very happy. I'm so glad to hear. But I also just saw one comment that is actually one of the things I was looking out for as yes, but I really should be using it more. And that is the thing. When it comes to you and thinking about you as an instructional designer, everything that we have seen so far, that people have gone through, what people are transitioning over into, there almost is this kind of identity crisis. And what I mean by that is that for many people, they worked at several different organizations. And during these really crazy times, especially during the pandemic, a lot of people were let go of, and they had layoffs and other things of that nature. And they felt like they lost their identity because they worked at that one organization for so long. And now all of a sudden they're like, I don't know who I am. Like I always worked there. Like what am I? And what I want to be able to instill into you is that you are a designer. And with that being said, you, my friends, excuse me, you are a living, breathing, walking brand. Everything that you do, everything that you share for being online, it represents you as a brand. It represents your skill set. It represents everything that you are passionate about and that you are driven about and what it is that you want to be able to do. Now, of course, if you have been looking at so many of the different job postings online lately, one of the things that has been absolutely shocking to see, and I saw this actually the other day, is that there was one job posting that went up in the morning, and I think it had around 70 applicants. And then by the evening, it had 300. And LinkedIn actually shows that, right? It's just like, okay, it's been 12 hours. Like, what happened during that 12-hour time frame? And of course, more and more people are applying now more than ever to be able to do this. So the competition is getting fiercer. So in order to help you, I want you to absolutely be able to stand out from the crowd in your own type of way. And how you're going to be able to do that is certainly if you want to have some form of an online presence. That is great. But really what I want you to think about more of, though, is what are you great at and how can you further develop this skill set? If you're looking at a bunch of different job postings online, you're going to see certainly some of them. They will call out everything. They are shooting for that magical unicorn. They want the sun and the moon and the stars. And that's really not realistic. But for some job postings out there, they're going to specifically call it all out that they want someone to be able to use backward design. And that's all they use, or perhaps for agile, or perhaps all they're focusing on is one or two things. And if you can really pick up on what it is that they want you to be able to do, and you can try to go in and learn as much as you can and practice and say these things out loud and walk people through what it is that most likely they're going to be asking about for an interview, that is absolutely going to be incredibly helpful. Now, what also do I mean by a brand? Because if you do have an online presence, yes, you can absolutely have a website. If you want to do something with blog or articles or a portfolio, you can absolutely do that. But you do not need to start your own LLC or your own business or anything like that. Just by using LinkedIn or just by having your own website, that is a step in the right direction. And you can even do something as simple as becoming the person who hosts like virtual book clubs. If your friends and colleagues and peers start to know you as a person who is the organizer, who is the leader amongst the group, who can go through these things and keep people together, that leadership skill set is incredibly valuable. You can also create study groups, work groups, masterminds, whatever you want to be able to call them, anything where you can bring people together in order for all of you to have this collective goal of just professionally developing a little bit better every single day. If you can do that, over time, it is truly going to be incredible. Now, within LinkedIn, who should you be connecting with? I would argue that from all the people you should be connecting with, you should be connecting with other instructional designers. Now, why? What is going to happen, what it's going to do, it's going to change the algorithm on LinkedIn. For years, I didn't do this. I added anybody, and it made things super confusing because I would go on LinkedIn and see pictures of cats in politics, and I'm like, oh, I don't understand. Like, what is this? Like, I thought it was like a professional development kind of thing. And then instead, I started to add other instructional designers and educators and teachers and professors. And all of a sudden, I had this wealth of knowledge where if I just refreshed my feed, all of a sudden, all these things began to pop up with relevant information, staying on top of trends and research and everything else within the online learning world. I'm often asked about how I keep up with being able to see what other people are doing in the field and with other different things of research and new technology. All I need to do, folks, is to go on LinkedIn. There is nothing else I subscribe to. I'm not a part of some crazy newsletter. I don't have to do anything. All I am doing is learning from other people like yourself and seeing in real time what you are sharing. And I start to dive on in deeper and notice some of those same terms appearing again and again and again. So as you are able to do this and connect with other instructional designers, the biggest thing that you are going to notice is that instructional designers post instructional design jobs, which it makes so much sense because it's their team, their unit, their organization that's doing the hiring, and they know about the job posting before anything else, before anyone else. So they share about it. And just to give you an example, and please excuse how awful this looks. I'm well aware that this looks like absolute trash. But to give you an example is that I refreshed my feed, and within 2 minutes, I scrolled down and I took a screenshot of every job posting that I saw within those 2 minutes. And that is what led to these 5 different job postings. Did I have to look anywhere else? Nope. It was literally just from the feed and connecting with other instructional designers and then seeing this. And then again, of course, as you start to see these and as these jobs are being posted, you are going to have a connection that works over there. You're going to have somebody who, of course, is looking for the same thing, looking for somebody who they know that they're able to actually say, oh, yeah, I know that person. We talked about this before. Or perhaps, oh, yeah, I've seen their postings. I've seen what they have been sharing. We definitely think alike and share a lot of the same types of thoughts around instructional design. That's interesting. I wonder if they're going to apply. And that's going to start to give you a much better chance as far as for being able to actually go and to grow. I've been speaking of growing, by the way, just to really, really, really hit home on the state of the instructional design world right now. Same thing. I just took a bunch of screenshots quickly of some of the major names I could see as far as for who was going to be hiring. And as you are seeing, from Harvard to Apple to Zoom, Discord, Amazon, Zillow, and so many more. And of course, once again, every time that you are going to be looking at that, you can see who works there, and you can use the Apply Now with LinkedIn button, which basically pulls all of your information from LinkedIn, shares it with the hiring manager or the recruiter, and it makes things so much easier, especially for all of you who are submitting resume after resume and cover letter after cover letter, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's literally a full-time job. It's trying to go and apply for a job. Because it is. And that's certainly what it feels like. But this also shows the growth as far as for how we are extending. And with all that being said, I'm not sure if you folks have seen this. This still absolutely blows my mind. We have invaded the NFL. We have invaded the National Football League. The Broncos hired an instructional designer. And actually, I did some more Googling about this. And this instructional designer was also a freelance designer for the Green Bay Packers, which is absolutely insane to think that we have gone into the NFL. Now, of course, as a hardcore New England Patriots fan, it absolutely kills me that I am rooting for the Denver Broncos this year, but I want this person to do so well that every single team is going to hire other instructional designers. So I'm cheering for the Broncos. So let's go Broncos, I guess. I don't know. So weird to say, but either way. So now you're saying, okay, Luke, sounds fantastic. I'm going to use LinkedIn to hire and connect with other people. Where do I find these people who work for these different types of organizations? Because perhaps you are looking for somebody who does work at Apple, Amazon, Google, or whatever it is, and you just want to learn more from them. You want to follow along their journey. You want to see what it is that they are going to be posting about. How do you find these people? Once again, LinkedIn. But it's a little bit different compared to what you might have done before in the past. If you go into the search bar in LinkedIn and type in the words instructional design, and then click on the button that says people, and then search, what's going to happen is that all instructional designers with their titles on LinkedIn is going to pop up. Now, if you want to get specific, and if you wanted to find someone, I work at MIT, we'll use that. If you say instructional designer, MIT, people, search, I guarantee that myself and my colleagues, we are all going to appear. This is actually how some people have found me when I worked at other universities, and they wanted to learn more about what it was like to work at that university. They had questions. They weren't really sure, is this something I want to be able to do? Do I want to work in higher ed? And they reached out to me early on. And this is actually how they found me. And I found it so astonishing because it's not like anyone told you or trained you how to do this, but they all shared this similar type of thing. So by all means, you can do this. Now, if you're trying to be able to figure out, so how do I reach out to these people? and have it not be weird, because it's definitely a little bit interesting to do a type of cold outreach, which I understand about. Not every person is jazzed about messaging a stranger and hoping for a happy and pleasant response. But this is an example that you can use if you want to think about it from a template. I was actually able to receive this from another person, and this is what they said. They sent me over this message. It basically says, "Hey, Luke, hope this reaches you well. I'm sure you've heard this phrase about 10 times this week, but I hope that you are. I really appreciate reading your articles and content posts about online learning and management. If you ever have the time, I would really appreciate a small 10 to 15 minute window of your time to connect via Zoom. As I venture into this online world of higher ed, I would love to learn from your experiences." I just so happened to actually have 10 to 15 minutes that day, reached out and said, "Sure, if you want to chat via Zoom, let's do it. Happy to share with you what it is that I know." It was an absolutely awesome, incredible conversation, just having basically a virtual coffee chat and sharing about each other and just giving some words of wisdom to hopefully help her out. And now she's an instructional designer doing often amazing things. And it's just so cool to be able to see. Now, you can absolutely do this too by reaching out to other people, by asking if they wouldn't mind to have a small 10 to 15 minute window to be able to chat. And you can also absolutely phrase that as far as just being a coffee chat. It works quite a shocking bit of time. So definitely feel free to do that. If they don't respond back to you, that's also a-okay. Not every single person is going to do that, but just FYI, I found this to be an incredibly easy and effective way in order to connect with others, especially on LinkedIn. And then the last thing, folks, I want to be able to share with you is the future of instructional design. And this is kind of funny because, of course, before you go into a field, or if you're an entry-level instructional designer inside of a field, you're probably wondering, where is this going? Excuse me. Where is this actually going? What is it that we're going to be doing? And the thing is, and my hint for you is that it's already here. How many of you have actually asked this question about, are you thinking about the future of instructional design? Go into the chat once again. Give me a quick yes. Give me a quick no. Have you thought about instructional design in the future before? Not shocking at all. I'm seeing a lot of yeses because, of course, we are wondering about what it is that we are doing and where it is that we are going. Also, I saw too that a bunch of you were just sharing your LinkedIn profiles as well to connect with one another. Absolutely, please feel free to do that. If you want to be able to create your own connections or your own group, absolutely feel free to share your LinkedIn profiles inside of a chat. But the thing is, folks, I would say the future is already here. Now, what do I mean by this is that there are certainly obstacles. There are barriers to be able to implement, to be able to scale. Sometimes it's pricing. Sometimes it's a variety of things of why we haven't actually done things the way that we're trying to think about it in the future. But what I would say is that really it's already here. And this is what I am currently seeing. For instance, if we wanted to have discussions, instead of the same old discussion boards, why can't we use something with technology like with GatherTown, a type of a platform that kind of looks like if Zoom and The Legend of Zelda had a baby, it would make this. As far as for being a 64-bit type of an avatar world, but is all based around proximity, where the closer that you get to somebody, the more you can hear them. And if you're done with the conversation, you just back up and walk away. And then again, of course, the screen is going away. You can design and customize the entire learning environments, change literally every single thing that you want to do. And instead of the tried and true traditional discussion boards, you're like, actually, we're going to do live discussions and we're going to have it be in this way. Or maybe you're like, you know what? That's actually really cool, but what about something else? And for that, I would give you Spot. Now, Spot is a first person or a third person. You can actually change the view depending upon what you want. But I started to host my office hours this way. Students would literally come through this type of 3D glass door as I was sitting there listening to music, and there were things on the side of the wall playing from the YouTube video, and we would just come and chat, and I would just hang out there for an hour and just wait for people to come to my office hours for the courses that I taught. And of course, every time that they came on in, they were like, what is this? Like, this is different. Like, yeah, I know it's kind of cool to be able to think about this from more like of a, here's your futuristic office hours kind of thing, but it's actually here in person. Now, for many people, turning on their camera during Zoom is something that they just absolutely dread. They're sick and tired of doing it. And I 1000% understand why can't we use more along the lines of avatars, like something like with Ready Player Me or Face Rig. Go into the chat real quick. Have you seen either of these things before? Ready Player Me or with Face Rig? Getting a lot of yeses and a lot of no's as well, too. So Face Rig is so fascinating as well because it absolutely, at Ready Player Me, there's a whole bunch of them that you can use, but they follow along with your mannerisms and with your movements. So if you do not want to be on camera for whatever, there's a variety of reasons for why folks should not be on camera, which is absolutely A-okay. This can be different. It still shows that you're paying attention. It still shows that you're interacting. But yes, you might look like a 3D version of yourself or perhaps like a raccoon, whatever floats your boat. You can do absolutely anything. Now, of course, we could be talking about extended reality. We have to talk about this as well, too, because the metaverse is here and people have already been dabbling and using it now for over a year. And this is actually a picture coming from Facebook's Horizon workrooms when they use the Oculus and they're wearing those things inside of their faces. But this is something that people are using as far as for the future with remote working. Why can't we do this? We can. Yes, there are barriers, absolutely possible, but people are doing about this right now. For some people, this is their normal working environment that when they sign on and they do their 9 to 5, they are inside of these types of rooms. It's not going to be too long until it's very common that a bunch of folks within one organization will be wearing Oculus, and that's how we're going to be conducting things instead of using Zoom or perhaps with something similar. And then the last thing to be able to share with you, which I've found extremely interesting, is the concept of learning tracks. Go into the chat for me real quick. Have you heard of learning tracks before? Interesting. This one's a mixed response, not so much a resounding yes or no. I saw that someone asked, did we talk about it as pathways? That's another term as well, too. But what you are currently seeing, which is so interesting when it comes to learning tracks, is that I started to use this with one of my courses because the course was designed to be a marketing graduate course. And every single week, what I found out from folks is that I would always ask about your interests. Why are you here? How can I help you? And I found that there was a split number of people who came in because they wanted to be a marketer for a team, for an organization. But by far, there was another half who wanted to become entrepreneurs. And that's why they were coming in to learn more about marketing. Now, this was really interesting because I thought about it. And I was like, wait a minute, could I, in theory, excuse me, give them the flexibility to be able to choose what learning path they wanted to go down? Could they actually pick and choose the entrepreneur path? Could they pick the marketing path? And sure enough, they could. I can design and take the content, the activities, the assessments, and actually put it together in its own package that would be for an entrepreneur pack versus somebody who is going as far as for being with a team. Now, you could even hypothetically change this as far as for saying, I also want to include an easy, medium, and hard track if you so choose to be able to do this. Yes, that's going to take time. It's going to be difficult to be able to build and expand out, but it's just more about thinking for the future. This is a possibility that you can actually do. And for a lot of you who are inside of the EduFlow cohort, because this is all made inside of EduFlow, by the way, is the platform that I use to do this, you've also probably noticed that if you're inside of the Instructional Design Principles for Course Creators course, it is going to be able to allow you to pick and choose what track you want to go down as far as for, do you want to be an instructional designer in corporate, government, higher ed, K through 12, or nonprofit? And indeed, you can pick and choose what track you want to go down, and this would unlock unique discussions pertaining to the different types of tags and the different types of tracks that we created on the back end. It gave a sense of flexibility, of freedom, of a choose your own adventure. And this, to me, is by far where we are going to be going into the future. But also, once again, as a reminder, this is literally happening right here, right now. Well, folks, If you made it with me all the way until the end, which 130 of you did, thank you so much for sticking around for this entire hour to hear about the babbling of instructional design. The last two things I'm going to mention is that if you did enjoy this, as far as for with all of these different types of topics, my book is literally called the exact same thing, What I Wish I Knew Before Becoming an Instructional Designer. That goes into many, many, many more topics. I was just trying to give you some of the overall findings and some of the most interesting things from the book. But of course, there are more inside of there. And the other thing is that if you are curious more about working with other people and collaborating and building relationships with subject matter experts, our course over on EduFlow Academy is actually next Wednesday is when the course does kick off. It's a 2-week course. We go through things as far as for every strategy and tip and technique I can throw at you to make you a better person, a better relationship manager, and a better collaborator. So if you want to find that, you can go to EduFlow Academy and find the link over there for that course. But other than that, folks, besides the fact that my voice is completely given out on me, so it's been a super interesting time trying to do this. But besides that, if you have any and all questions, post them inside of a chat, and I am just going to do a rapid fire round, answer as many questions as I can while we have a couple of minutes left. So please feel free to do that, and absolutely thank all of you. I know that I went through things very quickly, but thank you all for attending as well. And I see one question. What is the best way for an ID professional to showcase his skill set, please? Absolutely. So fantastic question. If you are thinking of, so I'm going to be actually interpreting this as far as for with you trying to be able to develop, I'm going to assume a portfolio is kind of like where you want to be able to think about this for taking this type of question. When it comes to a portfolio, what I am really looking for when I am reviewing a whole bunch of them is that very much I want to be able to have somebody tell me a story and walk me through a project piece by piece and step by step. I really want to be able to see your design process and your thoughts and figure out exactly what it is that you did, where you did it, and how you're able to do this. So to give you a type of an example, let's say that you have a project and you are going to be able to talk about the introduction to the project. You then are able to clearly define the problem, what you were trying to solve with education and training. And then from there, you're going to be talking about your research, your analysis. How did you know that all of this existed? What were you trying to be able to do to figure out a solution? Then from there, walk me through the design process. Walk me through your steps. What is it that you actually did? How did you make everything? If you can include anything as far as for resources or guide or a video or for anything else that you want to be able to showcase and demonstrate all of your skills inside of that portfolio, inside of that website, that is absolutely fantastic. And then at the end, talk about what were your learnings? What were your findings? What is it that you actually were able to learn along the way? And if you could go back and redo this all over again, give me a little reflection as well. What would you do differently the next time? What did you actually learn about every single step? In a very quick 2 seconds, that is what I would be looking for to try to be able to showcase that. What do you think is the biggest mistake people make in presenting themselves if they want to move into instructional design from teaching? Fantastic question. What I keep on seeing are people focusing only on authoring tools. I get it. Authoring tools are a part of a job, I understand, but there is so much more to instructional design. What I deeply, deeply care about is not the fact that you made something on Canva and that it's pretty and it looks great. Like, okay, great. But if you're going to be an instructional designer, think about how I was talking about how folks are going to be wearing so many hats, from being the researcher, the project manager, the relationship manager. Those are the things that we're going to be asking about, especially too inside of your interview. I guarantee it's going to come up with something of, tell me a time you worked with a very challenging person. How did you get around this? What is it that you did? And those types of experiences that you have potentially had before in the past, they're definitely going to come up. So think about instructional design from this overall type of overarching thinking of somebody who knows about learning, relationships, project management, research, and technology. That is going to be the key there. Seeing a lot of thank yous as they keep on going down. Thank you. Thank you to all as well. There we go. Another question. How do UX and instructional design intersect? Oh, that's so interesting. I love this question. So fun fact, a guest is coming on the podcast who knows quite a bit about UX, and she's a very special guest because she's my wife, and she's a UX designer for Wayfair. And constantly, it's so interesting because we'll have conversations about the design process and what it is that we did and how we go about things. And there's a lot of overlap when it comes to design. It's really interesting. Actually, even the portfolio steps that I just mentioned could very well transfer over into a UX portfolio as well too. So it is really fascinating because this element of research and focusing on, we talk about it as the learner experience. That's what we're trying to think about it. They're defining it as the user experience, but how is somebody using the product? What are they taking away? How are they able to assess their knowledge? How are they able to actually go about with everything? And then again, of course, we need to be able to collect feedback. So if we're giving them a prototype, we need to be able to then monitor, collect that feedback, and then apply those changes into the product and keep on doing it again and again and again until we know for certain that we have something. So understanding and learning more about human behavior and how they are using that product, absolutely an overlap between UX and instructional design. And absolutely stay tuned for that episode because she can explain it a million times better than I ever can. Going down, Luke, if you don't mind, what was your first portfolio piece that got you hired for an instructional design role? This is actually kind of interesting. So I actually made online learning communities for a university. At the time, it was for roughly about 60,000 students or so. And I talked about how I built a community around that. And I showcased that because I had screenshots. I was able to obtain permission. I obviously blocked out privacy for names and people and all those things like that. But I showed how I built the website, how I built the community, how I kept it going, how we included and increased retention rates time over time again to make sure that that was going to be working. And that was what I used, my very first portfolio piece. And eventually I took that and I moved on to Northeastern University. And that's where I started to really dive on and even further into instructional design. How can I find Smees for my portfolio project? You are going to be surprised about the fact that you can actually reach out to quite a few people to be able to help you. My last YouTube video actually describes about how some of the people that I reach out to in particular are actually entrepreneurs. Now, with that being said, of course, I want to make sure that you aren't just constantly working for free and that you're working for a for-profit. That can definitely get kind of sticky. But for some people out there, for entrepreneurs who are in the nonprofit section or just starting from scratch and they need help, they are very interesting to work with because entrepreneurs are subject matter experts and you can actually learn from them. Or of course, if you don't want to do that, reach out to entrepreneurs, even other teachers. You know the content like the back of your hand. If you are going to be designing someone's online course for them, have that person be your subject matter expert. And then in return, you can be their subject matter expert to understand that perspective as well and know about the shoes from both sides of the story. Is there any keyword banks that we can use in our resume that screams instructional design? Yes, but also the other thing that I keep on seeing a lot of people do is that they just do like a brain dump of every single instructional design word ever. And it's like, oh, how do you actually know about every single thing you just said? Because sometimes you're reading that and you're like, I don't think you meant the word that you actually meant because people are including every single thing. So is there an overall word bank? I'm sure if you just Googled instructional design glossary terms, something like that, a bunch will pop up. But once again, I would be very hesitant to be able to say about if you know for some, that are absolutely going to be instructional design words, like with, well, by words, I also mean acronyms for ADDIE, SAM, UBD. Those things are definitely going to pop up. And of course, subject matter expert, AKA Smees. Those are some of the jargons that we definitely use. That's the beginning of this field at nearly 50 years old. No problem there. You can absolutely transition on over, especially with your past experience, whatever you have done. There are definitely elements that you can take away from every job and be able to try to repurpose that and talk more about it from an instructional design space. So whether you are a teacher or coming from customer support or whatever it is, there is always something that you can try to be able to do and to take away from that. The biggest thing, which talking about and going back to a lot of those other different types of questions, is really trying to be able to gain that type of experience with working with other people. So once again, if you do want to be able to volunteer with a friend, a colleague, a coworker, and just try to be able to see and understand the process about how actually do you make a course. And one of the things that I would recommend is a concept that is known as backward design. Many educators use backward design. It is a very simple, relatively easy method to be able to use. If you do that, and once again, you can just Google backward design. I have a course on backwards design as well, but also you can just Google backward design. That's going to give you at least a blueprint for you to be able to follow, and that will help you to see some of those steps a little bit more.
Awesome.
All right.
Luke,
Yeah, I was gonna say,
so
I know
much.
we're at time. I know. It's like I'm trying to fire away as many as I can. There's still like
Perfect.
47 messages. I think I got them all.
I think
Maybe.
you got all the questions. That's
Did I get
amazing.
them all? Awesome.
We have
Boom.
like 60 seconds if anyone wants to ask like one more question, but this is amazing. And I put the link in for Luke's course on EduFlow Academy. It starts June 15th, so feel free to check that out, as well as Luke's book, What I Wish I Knew Before Becoming an Instructional Designer. And yes, feel free to save the chat if you wish you had been able to click on everyone's LinkedIn, but you were busy listening. It's the 3 dots, then you click more, and then you click save chat. So we'll give you a moment to do that before we close out. But thank you so much for coming. Appreciate it, everyone. And I hope you have a wonderful day wherever you're at.
Absolutely. Thank you, folks. Really appreciate all of you attending and staying all the way to the end. Absolutely awesome. And I look forward to hearing more from all of you in the future.
If you'd like to wave and say goodbye out loud, feel free. It's fun.
So long, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Take care, folks.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to close out our Zoom. I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Bye.